You know how right after Bambi's mother died and it tried to soften the blow by immediately cutting to singing birds and flowers? Well, that's how I describe what happens throughout this entire movie, except instead of singing birds and flowers, they just switch to silly stuff. It doesn't matter what stuff, just as long as whenever something depressing happens, which is often, there will be something proportionally silly to happen right after. Every movie can use some comic relief, it's not a bad thing. But Hunchback seems to think that it must be forced into every dark scene in order to keep it okay for kids, but at the expense of this, it ends up ruining the tension that it just set up. The point of comic relief is just to be this small little release of tension in order to ease the audience when things might be getting a little too heavy. It's a short relief. If you are constantly relieving the tension in every one of your scenes, then there really is no tension left. There's no excuse for this many silly things happening this constantly, and they're not particularly funny things, they're just silly things happening for no other reason but for the sake of being silly. If these things were at least funny or clever, then I would try to defend them, but they're not. They're not even trying to be funny, they're just throwing in random cartoon sound effects. Oh yeah, those are the actual sounds in the movie, I'm not adding those. The movie feels a need to let you know when things are supposed to be funny by throwing in these stereotypical, lazy, overused sound effects that make the Looney Tunes look subtle. Well, it's a cartoon, right, so it should have cartoon sound effects. Yeah, they're all the same, right? Yes, yeah, it doesn't matter the tone or the source material, as long as it's animated, then it must sound like other animated things. Right? Right. I'm right. The sounds don't add anything, they just feel like they're hitting you over the head with this is supposed to be funny. And it's not. It's jarring, and it only furthers the stereotype that animation is only capable of this. Now, I love goofy cartoons, and I love silly cartoons in general, but this is a movie that is so capable of so much more, and it shows it. This does not seem like the kind of movie where a goofy yelp should be put in. You already have comic relief characters, isn't that enough? Stop making your whole movie comic relief. Why is that in here? Why is any of this in here? Whose idea was it to put goofy yelps in this movie?
George is getting upset!
At this point, you probably think I hate this movie. I don't. I only complain because of how much I do like this movie. I really do love this movie for what it does right, and it does do a lot right. It's beautifully animated, it has an amazing musical score. I didn't even get to talk about some of the really great songs this movie has.
God help my people, we look to you still.
But the dead don't talk, so you won't be around to reveal what you found. We have a method for spies and intruders, rather like hornets protecting their hide.
Who freely walk above there just one day, and then I swear I'll be content.
And it has some deep and surprisingly serious moments.
Give her some slack, then reel her in.
When it wants to. The movie is really good at having these really subtle scenes that only serve to show how bipolar it later gets.
Very eyes of
When the movie isn't trying to be silly and acts more grounded, it works. At times it can even be more funnier this way.
Permit me, I'm Phoebus. It means sun god.
And yeah, I know it isn't exactly faithful to the novel. I don't really care. It was based on one of the stage adaptations anyways. And for those of you who might not like the Disney formula, then you will probably love this ending because the guy doesn't end up getting the girl in the end. And it's shocking and heartbreaking to him. And I've heard flack about it and how people wished he ended up with Esmeralda, but it's pretty realistic. And you have to admit that that's a pretty bold move story-wise. It still has a happy ending, but not in such an obvious guy gets the girl lives happily ever after way that it could have had. Instead, he gets what he really wanted since the beginning of the movie. Not to get a pretty girl, but to be accepted, despite his appearance. and then to later get a pretty girl and a shallow happily ever after ending in the sequel. Thanks for that. The film has enough things going for it that I really recommend anyone to give it a watch if you haven't already, and if you're able to look past a few things. Again, despite what you might think, this is one of my favorite Renaissance movies, and the only major gripe I have with it, if you couldn't guess, is that the movie isn't as unapologetic as it should be. No, you did a great dramatic sequence. Don't take it back. No, stop acting what you did was a bad thing. No, don't ruin what you just set up. Stop doing that. No. Ah!
Sorry.
I know that this is supposed to be a kids movie, and that it isn't exactly a crime for Disney to want to appeal to kids, but this movie quite clearly doesn't want to be one. If this was just a full-out Aladdin-style movie, then I wouldn't have as much of a problem that I have with it right now. But it's the fact that its primary tone is this. Not this. This. And it just feels like there's this other force in the production that was forcing this movie to be more and more kid-friendly. If the movie went all out and kept a serious, mature tone, then it could have been a truly great movie that could have been respected and remembered in the same way that The Lion King is. But it gets hoisted by its own petard here. They wanted the movie to appeal to kids? Well, great. Now the whole movie's written off as kiddie. Can we please thank the executives behind this, please?
Why, you're welcome. It was an absolute pleasure to ruin your... Oh, we were being sarcastic. I should have noticed that I didn't... I'll just shut up now.
Hey, here's something. Did you know that this was Michael Eisner's favorite movie? I honestly didn't know that. I'm honestly not trying to say something with that. I just thought that was kind of weird.